Hello everyone, welcome to my reading wrap up for April. So I managed to get through 5 books, actually about 5.5. Almost got 6 books done. So anyway, I will start with the first book is a Return to Woolfield Farm, and it's called Republic of Dirt, and this is by Susan Juby, who is a Canadian author. So the first book was called The Woolfield Poultry Collective, and I absolutely loved that one. It was laugh out loud funny, but at the same time it was dealing with some pretty heavy, deep topics. So this is a second book, and so basically this woman who lived in New York, she always dreamed about having her own farm and raising crops and animals and selling all her vegetables at the market. That was kind of her dream. She's right into the environment and that sort of thing. So unexpectedly she gets a letter from her uncle who has passed away, and he has left her his farm, which is on Vancouver Island. And so she thinks, what a great opportunity, this is my dream come true. So she goes there, and the farm is completely pitiful. Her uncle had 1 sheep and didn't grow any crops, and she meets the farmhand who didn't really do any farm work. He was still living there, and across the street this young man, 21 years old, has a lot of mental health issues, and he came to live with her because he didn't get along with his mother and stepdad. And then there's this 11-year-old who's there quite a bit because her parents are very neglectful and she needs a place to keep her chickens. So a lot of antics happened with these 4, and they try very desperately to get this farm going again, sometimes with a little bit of luck, sometimes not. And yeah, it's funny. It's not too many books make me laugh out loud, but this one was very funny. It was very touching. There was some talk of addiction and loneliness and lost relationships and found families. And yeah, I mean, you're laughing 1 minute and then it gets very serious the next. And yeah, I don't think she has any more books in the series. I wish she did. I really kind of get invested with these characters to see what's happening. But yeah, really enjoyed that one. And then this is Dark Asylum by E.S. Thompson, and this is the second book in the series. The first book was Beloved Poison, and there's 5 books in the series, which I managed to round up from here, there, and everywhere. I really enjoy this series. So E.S. Thompson, the author, actually has a PhD in medical history, and I am absolutely fascinated by medical history, being a retired nurse now. Just anything that has to do with the medical field in the past, I'm just fascinated by. So this particular story takes place mostly in a mental asylum during the 1850s. So psychiatry was definitely in its infancy, and there's really very limited as to what they could do with any mentally ill person. There's no medication. In this story, they are describing some physical experiments they do that are pretty horrific on the patients. So the main character is Jem Flockhart. When she was a child, her father disguised her as a boy because he had no other children, and he was the apothecary at this particular hospital and also the mental asylum. He would provide the drugs from plants, and he wanted his daughter to take over, but of course they didn't allow women to become apothecaries. So all her life since she was a young child, she's been disguised as a boy so she can take over her father's business. She also has a large port wine stain on her face, so she feels very insecure about that. So these stories, there's a lot of murder mysteries involved. There's a lot of side stories also, so you find out a lot about these characters, and I really, really enjoy the characters here. This goes into a little more depth about Jem and how isolated and lonely she is, because maybe one or two people know that she is actually a woman. And also with the port wine stain, she doesn't feel that she's attracted to anyone, so it delves a little deeper into that. So yeah, it's just, and it's so atmospheric. Like I found with this story and the last story, I mean, 1850s London, England, you just feel like you're just there because it's so atmospheric, it's so well told. And the stories, the characters, everything, I just really, really enjoy this series, and I would definitely give this a 5-star like the first one. The next book is by Kate Morton, so there's maybe one that I haven't read of hers, and I actually just bought her most recent one. I think this is the first book she's actually written in for like 5 years, or is it 7 years? It's been a while. So this one is called Homecoming, and she does dual timelines very well. So I think this one takes place in present time, and also I think it's 1959 in Australia, I believe. So I did get that one. So this is the Lake House. So this one is almost 500 pages. Her books are quite long and quite descriptive. This probably could have been maybe about 50 or 75 pages shorter than it was. It kind of lagged in areas. So initially, it takes place in 1933 in Cornwall. And this family has 3 daughters and a son, and during a summer party, the youngest child, the son, goes missing and is never seen again. And then in the future, one of the daughters has become a very famous writer, and she kind of doesn't think too much about what's happened in the past, and because it's just too difficult. So this detective actually goes to Cornwall in present day, and she is just taking some time off because of a case that kind of went wrong. So she ends up investigating this kind of abandoned house, and she finds out it belonged to this couple with their 4 children, and she finds out the youngest son went missing. So she kind of delves more into it, so it kind of goes back and forth in that. So I really did enjoy the story, but like I said, there's some areas that weren't really that necessary. Like, for example, the elderly writer, her assistant, this young man, probably about 3 pages are used up describing his background and where he grew up and how he became the assistant to this writer and all this. And I'm going, okay, is this significant? Well, it wasn't. So there was like 3 pages that could have probably been done in like a paragraph. But so yeah, some parts were just a little bit slow. So yeah, it was actually a very interesting story. So they go back as far as the First World War, where this woman, her husband goes off to war and returns with PTSD. And yeah, it was just I just love her stories. I really do like them. I do like the characters. But yeah, sometimes they're a little long, but I did enjoy it. And then T.J. Klune. So I finally got around to reading this and picked up a copy. And this is The House in the Cerulean Sea. So on Goodreads, this has got like 4.5 average for, I don't know how many reviews, like 500,000 reviews or something. It's wild. So I finally was able to pick it up. So it kind of takes place, I don't know, maybe in like an alternate kind of reality. So this fellow is a caseworker, and he goes and visits these orphanages or these homes where these magical youth live, and he goes to this particular house by the Cerulean Sea. And his life is normally just very bland. It's raining every day where he is. He goes to work, does the same thing, goes home, does the same, like, it's just bland. And then he goes to the Cerulean Sea, and he has a lot of preconceived notions of the children. And then the person who's looking after the children at this particular orphanage kind of loosens him up, I guess you could say. So he's there for a couple months. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. Like I said, a lot of people have preconceived notions about children or teenagers or adults, what have you. And this kind of says, listen, get to know the person first. Try to keep your mind open. Try to experience new things. If you're stuck in a rut, try to break out of that rut. There's just a lot of different lessons in this story. The one quote is, "I don't pretend to know the minds of men," she said, hands tightening on the steering wheel. "They fear what they don't understand, and that fear turns to hate, for reasons I'm sure even they can't begin to comprehend. And since they don't understand the children, since they fear them, they hate them. This can't be the first time you heard this. It happens everywhere," which is so true. You just see that more and more on the news, where people, they don't understand something, so they scared, and then they hate it. All too familiar. "It's not fair," Linus said, "the way some people can be. But as long as you just remember to be just and kind, like I know you are, what those people think won't matter in the long run. Hate is loud, but I think you'll learn it's because it's only a few people shouting, desperate to be heard. You might not ever be able to change their minds, but as long as you remember you're not alone, you will overcome." So yeah, great life lessons in there. I really enjoyed that. I would have to give that a 5-star myself. And the last book is The Mad Girls of New York by Maya Rodale. So I'm not impressed with the cover. This looks more like a romance novel or something fluffy, light reading, but it definitely is not. So this is based on Nellie Bly, who was a reporter in New York. Oops, just a sec. Okay, Nellie Bly, this is based on a true story. So she was a reporter in a city in the U.S., and then she went to New York because she wanted to make it big in New York. But most women reporters, they just wrote for the ladies' page. So there was a party or a wedding, they'd write about that, and they weren't allowed really to write about more in-depth topics. But she really wanted to do stories that mattered. She wanted to dig into stories and find out what was truly happening. So she gets to New York, and she decides that she is going to admit herself to Blackwell's, which is on an island just off the off of Manhattan. So this Blackwell's was a very notorious mental asylum, and on the island there was also a I think what that one disease was, I don't know if it was smallpox hospital, but there's also a prison on this island. So yeah, it was not a nice place. So she heard there's rumors of like horrific conditions at Blackwell's, and she wanted to find out herself whether these were true or not. So she actually told her editor that, you know, I'm going into Blackwell's, and he's going, "Are you crazy? You'll never get out of there again." He goes, "Well," she goes, "Well, just come and get me after a week." So so she ends up spending 10 days in Blackwell's, and yeah, it's the conditions are just mind-boggling. I think this was 1887. So basically, like I said before with that other story, psychiatry was in its infancy still, and they there was only so much they could do with these people, and if you're mentally ill, basically they would drug you till you could not respond too much, just to keep you under control. And the sad thing is, a lot of the women in this certain asylum were perfectly sane. If a family found the daughter was misbehaving, or she was inconvenient, as they say in this book, they would send them to Blackwell's. And the chances of you getting out again were pretty well nil. You ended up dying there. One sad thing is, if a husband did not like his wife, you know, she was talking back, or he got tired of her, what have you, he could send her to a mental asylum, and there's nothing she could do. She could be perfectly sane, and the conditions there were absolutely horrid. There was no heat. The food was horrific. They describe worms being in the bread. The tea was just so watered down and dirty, and they were given just the thinnest blanket to lie on. They had to sit on benches for about 12 hours a day, and they could not talk to each other. Like, it was just horrific. So she ends up breaking the story, getting out, breaking the story, and after that, a lot of reforms came about to improve the conditions in these mental asylums. So really fascinating story. Of course, this is a fictional the fictional version. I don't know what I was thinking there. Version. So I would really like to actually read Nellie Bly's own words. I think that would be quite fascinating. At the beginning of each chapter, they do have a little quote from her like her newspaper articles. So, but I would really like to actually read the articles. So yeah, she went on to become quite a famous reporter, a very respected reporter, and there was other stories she wanted to kind of expose a lot of different things in society. So yeah. Anyway, that's my reading wrap up. And right now, this is my third book that I'm starting this month. This is The Last House on Needless Street by Katrina Ward. So I've heard so much about this. And I'm on page 20, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? It's supposed to be very twisty, and it's from 3 different points of view, I think. So the main character is Ted, who's got a few screws loose, I think. And then another point of view is actually from his cat. So that should be interesting. But yeah, yeah, I've heard a lot of interesting things about that story. So anyway, that's it. That's my reading wrap up. Have you read anything good this month? Let me know. And everyone take care. We'll see you soon.